had a lovely lunch, and I'll make it quick and snappy and highlight the big points that we want to talk about. So, as I said earlier, my name is Sophia. I'm from Bournemouth University, and I work with Professor Leanne Finch and Professor Jane Murphy. So we were tasked with evaluating the project and demonstrating what works and what doesn't work, most importantly, so we don't keep replicating the same old, same old. Oh. Okay, so in order to do this, we did a mixed methods data collection. So I don't know the background of who's in the room. So usually in research, sometimes you might be given a lot of surveys to do, or sometimes people will talk to you about your experiences. So rather than do one thing, we did everything. So we gave people some questionnaires to fill in that measured different things, because ASPA is looking at a spectrum of things. We were looking at improving people's diet, because there was lots of cooking and eating. So it was important to see whether that caused any changes. And then we looked at well-being as well. We looked at self-efficacy, which was a big one for all our participants. And we did this pre and post. So participants had to fill in the survey when they joined ASPA, and they had to fill the survey again after 12 weeks. And that helped us to look at how they've grown, and for they themselves to kind of reflect and say, ooh, when I was coming to ASPA, I was weighing 10 kilos, now I weigh 5 kilos, for example. And the other interesting part was our qualitative data collection. So all our lovely participants became artists and photographers. So we gave them a brief, and they took some lovely, lovely photos. And I'm sure everyone has seen a sample of those. And we talked to them about the photos. I'll delve deeper into that. Okay, so I think Julie talked about the health kiosk. So the health kiosk was placed at each of the ASPA hubs, but also the MOT van went to so many places in the UK, and we took some of that data for our analysis. So overall, from the health kiosk, we had 2,473 participants. These were mostly female, well, almost 50-50, and age was average 48 years. So we can see that most of the data was from the road shows, but also the French hubs had a lot of participants using the kiosk, and a small proportion of the UK hubs. So what did the health kiosk tell us? Ooh. So the other thing was, ASPA was interested in employability anyway. So the health kiosk asked some questions about employability, and the majority of people were in full-time work, although we can see there's a whole range of people that the health kiosk captured. More importantly, we were also looking at body composition, so the weight distribution of the population, and also body fat composition. And we can see that majority of people are not actually obese, but are on the verge of it. So they are in the pre-obesity category, which is a bit worrying, because that is when you are prone to chronic diseases like diabetes. So this is really a key aspect, because it's important to catch people when they are on to going there, so you can actually do something about it, rather than when they've gone into obesity when it's hard to intervene. Also, we looked at people's motivation for using the health kiosk. And we saw that a lot of people were encouraged by the hubs naturally, but some people were also concerned about their health. And so when the MOT was going on, they thought, oh, shall I go and have a look what my weight is like or what my blood pressure is like? And interestingly, we found that their motivations differed according to people's weight status. So people who were health conscious and actually were proactive, although they were still in their pre-obesity category, were more prone to use the health cures than maybe people who were asked by the hub or people encouraged by family or friend. So moving on to the other measures in the kit. So apart from the health cures, we had 5 surveys that participants had to complete at the beginning and at 12 weeks. So we had the Aspire ladder. Sophie talked about how many people have to climb through the ladder. And then we have our food frequency questionnaire, which was a really long and lovely one, but very comprehensive, because we wanted to capture the diet in France and the UK, and that wasn't an easy tool to administer, but thank you, Celine and everyone else. So I'll just do 2 sections on each measure. So this is a picture of the Aspire ladder. So the first step for most of the participants is to join the hub and then move up the different steps on the ladder. So it maps participants' journey throughout the project in little steps. So it's not when you join Aspire and then 3 weeks later you get a job, although that might happen. But it was baby steps to help our participants. So overall for the Aspire ladder, we had 3 participants completing it, and with most being female and an average age of 38 years. And interestingly enough, what we saw was age and country differences in engaging with the Aspire project. So in France, for example, the people who attended the hub or were joining the hub at the beginning were quite younger than in the UK, but also their aspirations. So this first graph shows their current status on the ladder and where they want to get to at the end of the project. So in France, there were lots more people who wanted to get into employment, and that could be explained by the fact that most of the French hubs dealt with younger people who were looking for jobs, and they gave them soft skills and those tools that they needed to go into employment. So in the UK, the ultimate aim of most participants was not necessarily to get into employment, but perhaps to maybe volunteer or do work experience or things like that. So then, a focus on self-efficacy. So this was measured using a validated tool that is widely used. And the biggest, I think, result we had here was that there was a difference. Overall, on the average, the self-efficacy score for all the participants was 28, which is a score out of 40. So I'd say somewhere in the middle. And we could see that participants from France had higher self-efficacy scores compared to participants from the UK. We then went on to measure the health-related quality of life. So it's not just good that we are without disease, so you don't have any ailment, but that you are having a quality of life, you are enjoying life, and you have health and well-being. And for this, we use the EQ5D5L, which measures quality of life on 5 domains, which is mobility, self-care, usual activities, pain, discomfort, and anxiety or depression. So the ability to do these things without any hassle. It also has an analog scale of 1 to 100, where you can state how you feel today. On a scale to 100, how do you feel today in terms of your health and well-being? And you can choose 100 or 50. And with the 0 means poor health, and 100 means like good health. So overall, on the domains, there was some variation. So you can see, for example, for pain and discomfort, that we had more people with slight problems compared to either mobility or anxiety or depression. And most people were able to do self-care. They had no problem with that. But then you could see that there was a lot of pain and discomfort and a lot of anxiety and depression. We then went on to look at the quality of their diet, because as I said, Marion is doing lots of farming and growing things, and almost every hub had a cooking class, so it was important to see what the diet was like. So we used the validated questionnaire, which is an adapted version of the EPIC questionnaire from the UK and Metacardis from France. So we had a good marriage of both countries, and it's validated for use internationally. And we measured diet, so we computed diet quality using the Diet Quality Index, which is designed for international comparisons. And what we found was that actually diet quality of participants was really good. Well, good, because it was 70 out of 100. So I wouldn't say that was bad. But then on the DQI, we have different components of the DQI. So it looks at adequacy, it looks at variety. So it's not just important to eat well, but to have variety in your diet. It also looks at moderation, so whether you are having less fat, more salt, those kind of differences. And we found that there were country-specific differences in DQI. So people in the UK had higher moderation scores. So they had low fat in their diet. Surprisingly, in France, they had lower moderation scores. So, which is typical of the French diet. It's not necessarily low fat, but it's good fat and it's healthy. And in France, they had higher adequacy scores, so they had more diversity and ate from different food groups. We then went on to measure another aspect of health and well-being. So this was participants telling us themselves how they felt physically and mentally in the past 30 days. And for this data set, we had 261 participants who were mostly female. And overall, health and well-being was good, but there was some variation, and physical health sometimes impacted on daily activities, but not on the activity level. So more to the other interesting part. So after collecting all this quantitative data, I know there was a lot about, another questionnaire. We thought, okay, let's talk to you there and you share your experience. So rather than just sitting in the room and asking lots of questions, we gave our participants cameras. So the camera was the tool. And our participants had a brief with 7 questions. So they had to take a picture of their life before Aspire, life during Aspire, life after Aspire, life if Aspire did not exist, what Aspire means to their health and well-being, and the challenges they had in Aspire, as well as the biggest change in their life. And Photo Voice is a really interactive and participatory approach, because it's not us, the researchers, telling the stories, or the hub coordinator saying, oh, we implemented Aspire and it worked beautifully. It's the participants themselves telling us, I've come to Aspire, this is actually what has happened in my life. And it's really empowering because they get to tell their own stories. And we are back on. Thanks everyone for your patience, but we'll play the video at the end because I know we have some of our participants in the audience and they are really keen to see everything. So overall, the biggest changes we saw was in age and country differences is what we saw. So some of the metrics tended to be influenced by age, for example, the diet, and there were country differences, and I wouldn't say that was unexpected because I mean we've been discussing about how the culture of France and the culture of UK differ in certain aspects, and that actually came through. Preliminary data shows that there is some improvement in health and well-being from our qualitative data. The effect on main outcomes such as weight and employability is still unclear, but this data I've presented is just the baseline data. We are going to go on and analyze the 12-week data, which can actually show an effect of ASPAR on the other outcomes. So for future work, what we are going to be doing next is to complete the analysis of the post-intervention assessments and then to link the qualitative and the quantitative outcomes, because earlier on I had said for evaluating this project, we don't only want to determine what has worked, but we want to know what has worked, what hasn't worked, and for whom, because that is important in order to replicate ASPIRE everywhere, and also map out ASPIRE interventions to existing interventions and their theories. So this is one of the fabulous photos. It's one of my favorite ones. It's from a participant in Bournemouth. And I would say a big thank you to all the participants, especially the ones in the audience. I'm looking at all of you for helping us, and also to the hub coordinators. I know it wasn't an easy task, but we got there eventually. So thank you, everyone.